macroeconomic policy in the European Union. To be able to understand the way macroeconomic policy is implemented in the European Union, first of all, we have to remember that behind macroeconomic policy, or economic policy, we find two main actors. First of all, governments, which have in the hand budget, public finance, expenditure, taxation. And on the other side, central bank, which have the power, the monetary power in the hand, and which is connected to commercial banks. Now, what about the objective to reach the function of economic policy? To understand the objective to reach, we could describe what Musgrave called the function of economic policy. Musgrave defined in 1959 three major functions for economic policy. To understand the function of economic policy, the distinction of Musgrave in 1959 is quite interesting. So Musgrave identified three main functions for economic policy. First of all, the allocation function. Allocation function consists in producing public goods and services. As public goods and services, we know education, health, security, defense, public transport, and other public goods and services like that. The second function is the redistribution function, which focuses on the repartition of wealth between the richest and the poorest, and the objective and redistribution is to enable to reach a fair redistribution of wealth, to redistribute revenue from the richest to the poorest. And the last function is the stabilization one. Stabilization function focuses on the effect of a shock, of an economic shock, on the unemployment, on the growth rate, on inflation. So stabilization is mainly when an economic shock occurs, like pandemic shock, like financial crisis. This is the typology of Musgrave. This is what we call the Musgrave function, defined in 1959. What about the tools which exist to reach these three main functions? On one side, we have fiscal policy with public expenditure, with taxation, fiscal policy. On the other side, we have monetary policy. Monetary policy, which is in the hand of the central bank. Fiscal policy could enable to reach allocation, redistribution, and also stabilization. For monetary policy mainly focus on stabilization, and in most of cases, especially in monetary union, on stabilization of inflation. This is a picture of macroeconomic policy on the main objective of economic policy using Musgrave function. Now, let's move on macroeconomic policy in the European Union. In other words, in the European Union, who play the role of defined by Musgrave in the typology. What about the situation in the European Union now? In the European Union, for fiscal policy, we could identify European Union and European Monetary Union. For European Union, we can identify different actors for fiscal policy. First of all, what is called the community level, which corresponds to the EU level, with the EU budget, for instance. We could also find national level, which corresponds to member states. And in most of cases, in each country, there exist a lot of local levels. Each of these three levels could play a role in terms of allocation, redistribution, and stabilization. Especially, national level could provide public goods and services, local level also, and community level too. For redistribution, redistribution is mainly in the hand of national level and local level. For stabilization now, in the European Union, till now, stabilization function is mainly in the hand of the national level. What about monetary policy now? We have to distinguish a situation depending if a country belongs to the monetary union or not. If a country is inside the monetary union, the EMU, the monetary policy is in the hand of the European Central Bank, which implements one common monetary policy. But if the country is outside the monetary union, because this is already the case, outside the EMU, in the European Union we have some countries which are outside. These countries are their own national central bank, which implement their own monetary policy. Here you have the pictures of what is macroeconomic policy in the European Union, fiscal policy and monetary policy, which try to reach together allocation function, redistribution function, and stabilization function. Thanks for your attention.